Sean Smith. Happy February, everybody. Hope that you're all doing well out there. Hope you're staying warm. I hope you enjoyed my last podcast with Molson from Talisk. I can't believe that I have all of my friends from the Philadelphia Folk Festival coming back around now that it's cold out, and I get to go see them indoors in a completely different environment. They're doing their own concerts, which is exactly who I'm interviewing, or who you are about to hear is my interview with the incredible Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews is another one of these singer-songwriters that I met at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. I met Chris I first heard Chris in 2019. And from the first time that I heard her, I knew that I wanted to have her as a guest on the High Note. She's just one of those people that immediately captured my attention. I've heard her perform over the years, and it's a true honor and privilege to have somebody of such a great caliber, and she's just a fantastic person. If you're new to the High Note, welcome, please welcome. I'm sure you're interested. The past minute and a half of me rambling has got you hooked. But if you're new, welcome. This is a wide-ranging conversation, as all of my conversations on the High Note are. And if you are new, please subscribe. Hit the old subscribe button wherever you're listening to this. Check out my website, highnoteblog.com. It's not just a podcast, it's also a blog. Yeah, so I do music reviews on Tuesdays. I do new music Friday every Friday. You can also follow me wherever you do your social media at High Note Blog. Also, I have an email newsletter. I'm bringing back the old, if you're as old as me and you remember zines, like the punk rock zines, I'm bringing back an e-zine. The first one came out in, I guess, December, I think, or maybe it was November now. So there's going to be another one coming out, so you can subscribe to that at highnoteblog.com. But enough about me. This is all about one of my favorite singer-songwriters, Chris Matthews. Spelled C-R-Y-S. I have to get that out the gate right now. If you're not looking at your show notes, C-R-Y-S Matthews. You can find her at crysmatthews.com and on social media, Chris Matthews, C-R-Y-S, everywhere that you do your social media. She's just so great. We have a really cool conversation to talk about not only her songwriting process, but we also just talk about her journey in music, which I think is pretty cool. She also plays the guitar not only left-handed but upside down, which is pretty incredible. So we talk a little bit about that. We talk about just her stage presence, and if you're new here, we start out with music and we just kind of start talking and have a conversation. And I really enjoy it, and I think that you, the listeners, enjoy it. From what I've heard so far, you really like these conversations. So please leave me a review wherever you're listening to this. Shoot me an email. Leave me a comment wherever you're doing your social media. I do read these things. I try to reply to every single one. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. So, please check out Chris Matthews. She's on tour right now. As I mentioned, Talisk is on tour. They're coming back around, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But just this weekend, if you're listening to this when I release this weekend, Chris Matthews is going to be in New Jersey, which is amazing. She's going to be in the Outpost at the Burbs in Montclair, New Jersey on Saturday, February 11th. But before that, she is going to be at the WAMC's Performing Arts in Albany, New York on Thursday, February 9th. So if you go to chrismatthews.com, click on tour, you'll see all of the tour dates. And the most recent one is going to be this Thursday. So just in a couple of days, you'll be able to see Chris Matthews in Albany. And again on February 11th, Outpost at the Burbs in Montclair, New Jersey. And then on the second leg of her tour in March, she's coming back around in the neighborhood here at Joe's Pub in New York City on March 26th. So maybe you'll keep those St. Patrick's Day vibes going and go see her in New York City on March 26th. Please check out chrismatthews.com to see her entire tour. And also, her most recent album is Changemakers. We talk a little bit about that on the podcast. So go ahead and check that out wherever you listen to your music. Go on Spotify, look at Chris Matthews, look up Chris Matthews, and check out Changemakers. And if you're a Patreon person, I don't have a Patreon that I offer to you listeners, but I am a subscriber to multiple Patreons. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, check out Chris Matthews' Patreon. You can get a link to that on her website. Just look for the little Patreon button on there, or on your Patreon app, just search for Chris Matthews and she will pop right up. So that is enough from me right now. I'm going to turn it over to myself and Chris Matthews. Please check out chrismatthews.com, CRYS Matthews.com, and follow her everywhere that she does her social media at Chris Matthews. And now for my interview with the incredible Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews, welcome to the High Note Podcast.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am great. I'm so stoked to talk to you. I saw you years ago. I think it was at the 2019 Philadelphia Folk Festival. Did you perform at that one?
Ooh, I did. That was my very first one.
Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I saw you at I stumbled upon you. I thought it was one of those like singer-songwriters in the round type of things, and I think
Yeah.
I think you were on stage with I was thinking it was Steve Poltz, but now I'm thinking it was Dave Gunning. Does that name sound familiar?
I think it was actually David Miles.
Oh, it was Dave Miles, of course.
Yeah, I think it was him, and then I can't remember the name of the other group that was there.
Yes.
But yeah, it was cool. It was a very cool round.
I knew I was there because I had to interview somebody, and I couldn't remember who I was interviewing, and it must have
Yep.
been David Miles. Wow. So how did you learn about the Philadelphia Folk Festival?
Gosh, I mean, kind of coming of age as a songwriter in the NERFA community, the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance. I mean, all of the festivals in our region are always so active there at NERFA. So meeting folks from there, getting familiar with them getting familiar with me, and then of course my booking agency, they are very familiar with the Philly Folk Festival and often have artists from the roster playing Philly. So it was just great. It was just very serendipitous.
Oh, that's awesome. And what did you think of the festival overall? I think you were back this past year, weren't you?
Yep, yeah, it was so great to be back. It's really wonderful. I mean, the community of fans who love and adore that festival is just so lovely. Everybody's always so warm and so welcoming, and they do such a great job with the programming. It was such an interesting mix, like even just that round that we were talking about in 2019, it was such an interesting mix of genres, but everybody just flowed together so well, and the audience loved it, and it just was great. It was just really wonderful. The Philly Folk Festival is one of the ones that artists, like, we know our festivals that are great festivals that we love to go to, and the ones that are like, ooh, there's some opportunity there. And I just have had such a wonderful time both years at Philly. It's just a lovely, lovely community.
Oh, that's cool. And then so you're from DC, right? Originally?
So I lived in DC from 12 years. I'm originally a North Carolina girl,
Oh,
and you
cool.
know how we are in the South. We do not give up our home states, no matter how many places we live throughout our lifetime.
Much respect. Absolutely. Now, had you heard about the Philadelphia Folk Festival growing up?
No, not at all. No, I didn't. I wasn't even in the folk music scene growing up. I didn't even really know really much about folk music until I was much older, until I started writing songs, and then of course until I started going to places like NERFA and Folk Alliance and things like that. Yeah, so no, I did not grow up learning about the Philly Folk Festival at all. It just was such a lovely surprise to find out there are so many pockets of folk loving communities in this country and in the world, really. I mean, the UK does a beautiful job supporting folk music, etc. So no, it was a lovely surprise to find my way to it.
Same. Yeah, I grew up. I was like a rock and a punk rocker in high school, and didn't get into
Nice.
folk. And I didn't find the folk festival until 2012. But
Oh wow.
I'm curious as to like what is your journey into music? What did you listen to, and then how did you find playing guitar?
Oh man. So I am a preacher's kid. So I grew up in southeastern North Carolina. My first love of music was gospel music. Mom, was singing to me in the womb, and then as soon as I was old enough to carry a tune, I was pretty much singing in our church choir. And so from there, then just growing up listening to good soul music and things like that until I started playing in band. I'm a proud band nerd.
Oh,
And so
cool.
my next love was classical music. I was pretty sure I was going to be a high school band director actually until the day that I wasn't. And it was just such an interesting journey to get from that I guess iteration of music in my life to this current iteration. When I was in college, my college roommate, who was a percussionist, she was in a band, and so they had this gig randomly one night, and she was like, hey, I know you have pretty good chops on the keys because again, preacher's kid. She was like, can you cover us for this gig? Can you play keys? And I was like, of course I can, no problem. And she was like, and you also have to sing one song, which I can sing, but like that's not really what I did. And so I was like, are you sure? And they were like, yes, can you sing Tell Me Something Good? And so I did, and it was like the most incredible night. I had so much fun. I went home pretty much right after that gig and wrote my very first song, which was on keys. I didn't even play guitar at that time. I was writing and playing keys pretty much exclusively, and entered that first song into the campus talent show at Appalachian State University, won first place, which was like $500, and was like, oh man, this is pretty great. Maybe I'm okay at this thing. And then
Wow.
just kept on writing and just trying to get better and better at the craft over the years. And then guitar was such a funny journey. So I only learned how to play guitar so I could teach it to my girlfriend at the time, which is why I play it upside down and backwards, because I didn't learn on the left-handed guitar. I learned on a right-handed guitar, but I'm left-handed. And so I had to learn how to play on her guitar. So I just picked it up how it would feel comfortable for someone who is left-handed to hold it, but then had to learn all the chords upside down so that I could teach them to her. So later in life, it was like so much easier to travel with the guitar than it was to keys. So I just started playing everything on guitar and have been ever since.
A little bit of convenience there with the guitar.
It's like how many great stories begin with I was trying to impress a girl in college.
Absolutely. There's many good stories start that way, right?
Exactly.
So let's back up to the keys. So is this organ, and then were you taught by a family member? Like how did you get into music?
Yeah, so piano, just in piano, not organ, and then just learning by ear when I was like 10, probably 10 or 11. And then once I was reading music, then I could, read and play. But I learned originally just by playing by ear. Like I picked out Beethoven's Fifth, and mom was like, "Wow, you just picked that right up. All right, gonna make sure you get some lessons. Go take you to band." So yeah, it was really great. I always loved music. I mean, my family, they're so funny. They're all very very shy, but they're all very talented. So like none of them really sing without a lot of prompting and prodding, but they're all such lovely singers. And so I have a very musical family, but just nobody really played instruments or anything like that except for me. So yeah, she was like, once I showed an interest, she was very supportive. Mom was, of making sure that I got a chance to really really pursue it because she could see that I loved it and that I was, I had an ear for it. So yeah,
That
quite a
is
little journey.
that is super cool. That is super cool. And when you are a band nerd, are you like a prodigy? Are you like the best piano player in the band when you're a kid?
Not the best piano player. So my primary instrument was clarinet. So I was in the school of music for clarinet. And so yes, I was quite a good clarinetist. I'm still pretty good, not as good as I was then, but not bad. I'm gonna hopefully get to play a little clarinet on Heather May's new album. But yeah, so that I was very very good at. Piano was like I could definitely play well enough to get by, and but it was not my primary instrument.
I love the clarinet. I'm big. My
Yeah.
wife was a clarinet player. My roommate in college was a clarinet player.
Nice.
Shout out to MacGyver. I called it. When you go to college and you don't know your roommate, right? And like you call
That's
them on
awesome.
the phone, right? And I said like, hey man, I have a guitar. Is it cool if I bring it and play it? And he said, yeah, I play the clarinet. I'm like, we're gonna get along great, dude.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
So when you made the switch to guitar, what were you listening to? Did you have any like guitar inspirations?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a lot of Tracy Chapman and Ani DeFranco and like Chris Perica and artists like that. So I kind of was used to hearing the guitar just kind of be the embellishment, but artists, always put in the focus kind of on the song and on the story. So it was like I never really did a lot of finger picking or anything like that because I just wanted to kind of focus on the singing and focus on the song. But now, inevitably here and there, I will incorporate some. I mean, my goodness, I lived in Boone, North Carolina for 12 years, which is like bluegrass mecca. So, it goes without saying that some of that just kind of seeped in, just via osmosis, so much of that. So that's why I feel like often my music is kind of, it's not that it's genreless, but I feel like it just has tethers in various genres just because of the nature of having lived in so many unique places and really just kind of soaked in the music and the culture from those various places over the years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, how many instruments do you play these days?
These days, I mostly just play guitar. I will, on occasion, play keys, play the piano, and then get in my clarinet chops back up, and then playing a little bit of banjo. My friend Kathy Fink was teaching me banjo when I still lived in DC, which was really cool. And she's so fun. She's so talented herself, but then she made me feel so comfortable and at ease, kind of just trying to learn in her vicinity, which is amazing. If you don't know Kathy, she's just a phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal banjo player, as well as other instruments. But she wanted to make sure that I could kind of have an easy transition to the banjo. So she made sure that I got a banjo that was kind of custom strung so that the strings were kind of in the order the way I'm used to hearing the guitar. So like when I play the guitar, the bass strings are on the bottom. And so aurally, sonically, for me, that's kind of how I'm used to experiencing like a down strum. And so she made sure that the banjo was kind of similarly strung and that the drone was still in the right place for it to be for a left-handed person to be playing the banjo. So it was really cool. It's been fun. I played banjo actually on my song "How Many More." I learned that song on banjo specifically to honor Breonna Taylor. It was written originally on guitar, but I wanted to when I recorded on banjo.
Oh, that's beautiful. Why did you want to specifically record it on banjo?
So Brianna was from Kentucky, which is the bluegrass state, and so I just felt like that was just a nice nod, kind of to her in that way, musically. So I wanted to do it, and so I did it.
Wow. Oh, that's really nice.
Thank you.
Now, tell me about your songwriting process. Do you start out? You said before you focused a lot on the story. How do
Yeah.
you start out a song?
Man, it is such a grab bag. It literally is a different. I feel like every song I've ever written has been a kind of a different story. So oftentimes the lyrics will come first, and then because of the lyrics, then sometimes the melody will take shape. But on a couple of them, especially recently, it's just like this little motif will just get stuck in your head, and you just can't stop playing it over and over and over and over again. And so then I just get in a particular mood, or it conjures up a specific image or something like that, and then that's how the rest of the song kind of gets built around that. But it really does. It's like every single song is its own unique thing. I'm not one of those incredibly disciplined songwriters. It just sits down with a blank prompt and a sheet of paper every single day and just bangs out a song in like 2 hours. Um, it's always been kind of like free therapy for me. So the songs still kind of come to life in that same way. It's always kind of a process because I'm usually literally processing something. And so the story will kind of take shape, or what it is I'm trying to say about a specific issue. I'll kind of formulate my thoughts around that, and then hopefully, if all goes well, a pretty decent melody will come in there and help carry the story a little bit more easily.
Wow. Well, now was it? This is kind of going back, but was it difficult to pick up learning how to play the guitar because of the way that you learned it with the strings
No,
inverted?
it really wasn't. It really wasn't. I tell people all the time, it's so funny. You can always tell the guitar players that are in the room because when they come up to the merch table, the first question they have is, "Was that upside down?" It's like nothing else, just that.
Yeah.
But I tell them all the time, it's like if you learn it that way to begin with, no, it's no harder than learning it any other way. It's just like you're learning a new instrument. And so if that's the way you learned it straight out of the gate, it's pretty easy. If someone handed me a left-handed guitar and was like, "Can you play me Hot Cross Buns?" I could not do it. Like it's a completely different animal than how I'm used to holding it and playing it in the order that the strings are in.
Yeah. Yeah, and did you ever look at tablature, or were you reading music at this point?
Yeah, I was just reading music, and so I would just be like reading the chords and the chord shapes, and so learning that and then having enough of a background in theory to be able to weave the chords together so that they made a nice bit of sense with whatever melody I was coming up with. But yeah, I'm not like I don't really read much tablature. If I need to slowly do that, I can. It's very slow for me to do that.
As a self-taught guitar player before the YouTube days, I might be dating myself.
Yes.
That is how I learned with tablature. And I was just thinking, I
Awesome.
guess, if you're just looking at finger position, it doesn't matter where they're
Yeah.
which direction they're going in, right?
Yeah, it's just, it's like what you can tell as soon as you strum it down, you can tell like it's supposed to be a minor chord, it's supposed to be a major chord, so you know if your hands are in the right shape or not, or if it's the upside down way, and then you just make your fingers match what it is it says that chord shape is supposed to look like. And then again, just, having had a background in music, so like I know what it's supposed to sound like if I'm supposed to go from like a 1 to a 4 and a 5. So
Now,
that's it.
do you ever play with alternate tunings?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I do not, but I just was at the 30A Songwriters Festival and my friend Dan Navarro was down there and he had Dan has this adorable compact, it looks like a fishing tackle box and it's full of like 100 different capos. And he was like, okay, I just got this little capo and it basically makes me able to play in dadgad without having to do retuning. And so I just got me one of those so that I can start playing in basically dadgad and not have to retune my guitar mid set because I just don't like to do that. Mostly because I'm a band nerd, and so I always know it's not best for me to ramble because you just don't lose that. Like just because you're not in band anymore, like you are still a band nerd always, and so you just don't want me to just freestyle on a mic, just talking about any old thing. So I was like, I try not to tune in the middle of sets just to protect the people. They don't need to hear that. So I was so excited about the possibility of that. So I picked up one of those capos in Knoxville. I was down there for a show the other day, so I'm really excited to start playing in that tuning. And then also a while back, Cheryl Wheeler had shared one of her really, really cool tunings that she uses and a couple of chord shapes that work really beautifully for some of the way that she has her guitar tuned. So I've been holding on to that to try to break into some of that as well. So hopefully that will be on my to-do list for 2023 is to incorporate some cool alternate tunings or at least some alternate sounding tunings.
Oh, well, it is resolution season after all, so you
Exactly.
can resolve.
Yes, and those sound much more attainable than many of them. So I think I'm going to stick with those.
And do you just stick with one guitar? Because you mentioned you don't like to retune a guitar. You could bring, five guitars on stage. Do you only have one, and what kind do
Yeah.
you play?
Yeah. So I just bring one just because I'm a very, very practical person. And so I feel like, I just hear so many horror stories about my friends like getting robbed on the road, like in the middle of tour and stuff like that. And so I'm like, if I just have one guitar with me, it's just one guitar that I have to try to replace and not like my banjo and not another guitar and all this other stuff. So I usually just play one guitar and just have one guitar with me. So I play a Martin D28. It basically looks like a Johnny Cash Gibson, but like the Johnny Cash Gibson, the J45 was my dream guitar for the longest. And then the first time I ever got to pick one up and actually play it, I hated it and I was just devastated. I think I should have not played it in Austin, Texas. It was probably the problem at a Guitar Center. I maybe would have become a Gibson girl, but I just didn't like it. And the first time I heard that Martin, I was in love. And so I got a Martin instead of a Gibson, and I've been playing it ever since.
And never meet your idols, right?
That's what they say.
But the Martins do have a beautiful sound. Not
Yeah.
just and not just because of the Philadelphia Folk Festival connection
Yeah.
with the sponsorship of the main stage that you played on this past year.
Yeah.
But I think the Martins and the Taylors personally, I love the sound of both
Yeah.
guitars. I think they equally. There's some Taylors that I absolutely love, and there's some Martins that I absolutely love, but I think they're both pretty equal. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when you're on tour right now, so
Yep.
you had mentioned that. So what how long has your tour been? Where have you been so far?
So it actually kicks off, this leg of the tour kicks off on February 1st. So I'll start at Emory and Henry University and then be playing through the latter half of February. So I'm here resting up these first couple of days, getting ready to hit the road pretty hard. So I'll be going all the way up the East Coast and then over to the Midwest, playing in Michigan for a bit. Hopefully, the weather will cooperate. I'm very superstitious about playing in the winter. I used to never do it, but these are different times. So hopefully, the weather gods will be on my side.
Sure. Yeah, and you're coming up my way. You're
Yeah,
hitting Montclair, New Jersey on February 11th at
yep.
the Outpost in the Burbs.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I played an online show for them during the throes of the pandemic, and they just were such a lovely community. I really enjoyed that, and so I was very happy to get to know that I would get to play for them in person. And then a couple of my friends who have played before there said that that venue is really, really wonderful. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Montclair has a really cool music community because it's a college town. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's neat. I went to my first real emo show. I went to at the
Nice.
Bloomfield Cafe, one of those
Oh,
places where it was like a coffee shop by day, and then they would slide all the tables out, and
yeah,
turn it into a little punk venue.
that's
What's
awesome.
funny is we had a Chinese restaurant in it used to be here called the Pearl in South Jersey that did a similar thing, except they didn't really clear out the tables. They just kept them there, and then they would just have a punk show in the one room while people were just having dinner. Like, and they wouldn't even like put up. Yeah, it was just really.
That's so awesome.
It
That
was,
sounds like that scene in Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
and
So fun.
yeah, your tour. Let me see here. I was just looking at your dates. You're also going to be in New York City, in the big city at Joe's Pub on March
Yeah, yeah.
26th.
Yep. Yeah, looking forward to that. Joe's Pub is such a gorgeous room. Like every time I've ever played there, it's just always been a phenomenal, phenomenal night. They take such great care of the artists. Their lighting people are amazing. Like, oh, it's such a great room. Yeah. And then if you've got any folks in upstate New York, I'll actually be at the Linda up in Albany on the, I think, 9th of February. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you had mentioned the pandemic before, with playing at that show in Montclair. Has the
yeah.
pandemic changed the way you approach your tours or approach your music at all?
Oh, yeah, very much. Kind of, I guess, kind of both. The music, I think it has been such an interesting perspective lens, I guess, seeing how we as a society kind of endured such a tremendous loss of life kind of unexpectedly, and then how many people were resistant to doing simple things that would help, keep that loss of life a little lower. It was an interesting time, really, to be a songwriter. I think those of us who sing a lot of folk music and who sing a lot of social justice music, we kind of like journalists in a way. The way we kind of approach what it is we see. And so it has been an interesting time to be able to weave stories and to retell stories, and uh, it's just been such a fascinating time watching people react to this very, very traumatic thing that we all were kind of collectively experiencing. So I think in that way, it's definitely impacted kind of my storytelling. I don't think that some of the stories. that I have been telling would have had quite the same story arc, were it not for the pandemic and kind of how it brought out some of the best of us and some of us, and then the worst and some of the others of us. So that's been an interesting thing to kind of witness. And then as far as the performance aspect of it, definitely, because I do sing folk music, so many of my audience members are older. And so always being mindful of like ways to try to keep them safe when they do feel safe enough to actually come out to live shows, then that knowing that folks are not as comfortable coming out to shows, because it is still, we're not like, it's not like the pandemic is done, we're just in a different phase of it. And so for venues, it's still a struggle for them. Those venues that made it through the pandemic and were able to financially keep their doors open, just for the hope that like, hey, once this is over, like we'll be okay. But then now seeing, okay, so it's still not technically over, and folks are still not coming back to rooms the way that they came to rooms before, because folks are still worried and they're still scared, even with vaccines. So it's a different thing. It's like the metrics that we used to use for being able to say, okay, yeah, this is going to be a successful tour, or things like that, like all of that stuff is completely out the window. Like you just are trying to just connect with folks and just bring some hope and love to people that you can, because you don't know from one city to the next what people are feeling comfortable with anymore. And then it's like before you could count on ticket sales like ahead of time, but now people are just kind of waiting to see like what are the COVID numbers going to be that week? Do they feel safe to go to a place that week? So it's just a completely different landscape to be a touring musician in 2023 than it was in even early 2020. Like I think back to having been at Folk Alliance at the end of, I think the end of February or end of January in 2020, and just, I mean, there were thousands of us just in this hotel living our best lives, having the best time, and it is just a completely different world now, but we're still out there trying to make it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No more sharing joints. That's that's like the number one post pandemic rule is to bring your
So
own
funny.
Now, have you noticed that you connect with your audience a little differently because of like I noticed that you have a Patreon. Is that something that you
Yeah.
had before the pandemic or
Not at all.
okay?
Not at all. Yeah, it really was. I mean, the fans and the listeners have just been so incredible to so many of us. I mean, many of us would not have made it through the pandemic without things like Patreon and without the people who support us via Patreon. We were in DC. My partner on and off stage is also a singer-songwriter, Heather May. So we were in DC during the pandemic, and it's like all of our friends were saying, "Yeah, we got our COVID benefit money for being gig workers." And we never did. We never did. And
Wow.
still haven't. And so it's like we couldn't work. We could have gone and gotten like a job at Lowe's or something like that. But like as a creative, you don't want to have to do that. I mean, energetically, to try to completely repattern your brain to having to do something like that, as somebody who had a day job for many years before I was just doing music full time, it was like if it had gotten dire enough, obviously I would not have let my family not be okay. But it was like if I could have avoided it, I was going to try my best to avoid having to do that, because it was such an important time to just be able to be writing and to be able to be kind of documenting what it is we were experiencing and living through via song. And so many people were just like, "Oh, Patreon, absolutely, here you go." And so yeah, I don't know that I would have made it through the pandemic with my insanity, with my sanity intact, or my artistic ways intact, were it not for people being so very generous and loving and supportive because of Patreon.
Yeah, and you probably got a lot of people through the pandemic. Like, they were going home, going stir crazy, and they're like, "Shit, I
Yeah.
gotta, I gotta subscribe to Chris Matthews, or I'm gonna lose my
Yeah.
goddamn mind." I mean, I
I
need some.
know. It was crazy, man. It was like so many people were feeling so connected via music. Like we were doing live streams every week, and so we had this great community of people that were meeting up with each other and getting to know each other and show care to one another. And so like it really was. I mean, I feel like honestly, at some point somebody is going to take like an anthropological assessment of like how people appreciated the arts pre-pandemic versus how they appreciated the arts post-pandemic, because so many people have said some version of, the music definitely got me through. These live streams definitely got me through in so many different corners of the internet. And so I really do. I feel like that was one of the reasons that people were so very generous, is because they could actually tangibly see how the arts positively impacted their lives in a way that they kind of took for granted before.
Yeah, yeah, and they probably, and there were some people who also like saw how, like, I think you had mentioned, you use your songwriting to help you process certain emotions, and I bet
Yeah.
people found, like, I got more into wildlife photography because, like,
Oh,
and
that's
like
awesome.
sunrise photography, yeah, because couldn't really do a whole lot else.
Yeah.
So it was like, I could go outside and take pictures though, and like I had
Yeah.
always done that, and like I picked up the guitar and played, started playing guitar a little bit more.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
sure, yeah, and I'm sure that there were other people who, found their way through the pandemic by, finding a passion, whether it be music, listening to music, writing, maybe even creative arts like painting and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering. You had mentioned that you're getting ready to go on tour. What do you do anything in particular to prepare to go on tour? Do you have like a bucket list of things that you try to get done? Do you just try to chill, or are you like like packing?
Oh yeah, just packing. It's like making sure I have enough merch packed. That's priority number one. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of Vermont and being like, I don't have any CDs and I have to pay $300 to get them overnighted here.
Oh no, yeah.
It's the worst. So like making sure merch is good. Then because I'm so like I like to try to also pack relatively light. So then making sure I have, okay, I definitely have this outfit, this outfit. Like that's enough, and just rotate those. Rotate, like I'm still a preacher's kid, so I refer to everything in the context of church clothes versus play clothes. So it's like, do I have enough play clothes? Check. Do I have enough church clothes? Yes, 100%. And then, of course, like the tea is the biggest thing. I'm so neurotic about my tea when I'm singing. So it's like, do I have enough tea? Do I have the essential oils that I like to add to my tea? Do I have enough honey in case the venues didn't read my rider? And even though it is very simple and literally only asked for tea and honey, they somehow still did not get tea and honey. Do I have enough of my own honey? So it's like stuff like that.
Totally. What kind of tea do you like?
Okay, I like a blend of peppermint tea and throat coat, 1-to-1 ratio, then honey and my special top secret essential oil blend. So I like Twinings peppermint the best, but I will drink other kind of peppermint tea, but that's my favorite one.
Nice, nice. And you do wear your Sunday's best on stage. The first time that I saw you,
Always.
you were rocking an amazing bow tie. Now I have to ask you, do you tie your own bow tie, and
Oh yes.
what is up with the bow tie, and also like what is up with the dressing up on stage? Does it go back to being a preacher's kid?
I think most definitely. It definitely goes back to being a preacher's kid. Always, you got to put your best foot forward if you're going to be doing anything for people. Always. I don't think I'll ever lose that. Once in a while, if it's like a certain situation, I will get a little cash and wear like some nice jeans with suspenders, but still a bow tie, like no matter what. So the bow tie, yes, I am an absolute bow tie snob. I am like self tie or bust. That is it. I will wear a pre-tied bow tie, but it has to be because somebody gave it to me and they're going to be at the show that night, and I just don't want them to feel bad. So,
Respect. Oh, I love that. That's so sentimental.
but yeah, I don't like pre-tied bow ties if I can help it. I'm a definite bow tie snob because as a southpaw, it took a lot of time to actually learn how to tie a bow tie properly. I'm very proud of that fact, and so I like to tie my own bow ties, and I
Nah.
have quite the collection. A nerd in all things, not just a band nerd, the bow tie collection, the nerd runs deep. I've got my Game of Thrones bow tie. I've got my Star Wars bow tie. I've got so many that they are arranged by color, folded neatly into what would, in another context, have been a photo album, but they are perfectly pressed in this, and it just contains my bow ties organized by color.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that is so. That is. And why? How did you get into bow ties? Was there like a
It was
person
the
or a thing?
craziest thing. So I tried to avoid it for so long. So my ex-wife one day was like, "Listen, I think you should wear bow ties. I think you would look so cute in them." And I was like, "I don't want to wear a bow tie because, you know, this is me. I'm in America. Like people like to make assumptions very, very quickly based on very small pieces of information. I don't want folks just naturally assuming that I belong to the Nation of Islam. Like I don't want to be having that conversation every time I walk into a room." So she was like, "I don't think anybody is going to think that." So she bought me my first bow tie. I tied it. I loved it. It was such a cute aesthetic. And then everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, your bow tie is so cute." So then I was like, "Oh my God, she was right." And it was the rest is history. It's been bow ties ever since. So I still will wear a tie. I always like wearing ties as well. And so now my newest obsession is tie clips. I've gotten some really cool tie clips for Christmas. And so I'm starting to wear more ties like intermittently between the bow ties, but yeah, it is quite a bow tie obsession.
Oh, that is awesome. I love it. I love it so much. I think you do look adorable. Like, absolutely. I love the bow ties. I love ties and tie clips too are very cool. You can get some really
Oh my
cool
gosh,
tie
it's
clips.
it's so great. I can't wait. Next time I see you, I hope I'm wearing one of my cool tie clips so we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to be respectful of your time. So is there anything
Oh, totally.
that I didn't ask that I should have asked before I ask you? I ask
I
every
don't
guest
think
three final
so.
questions.
I
So
feel like we covered a lot of really good ground, Sean.
yeah, this has been great. This has been I've been thinking about this conversation since the first time that I saw you,
Oh,
and it
awesome.
definitely I'm happy that I got to speak to my idol. So
Oh,
it's been
so sweet. And I love your pictures so much. Oh my gosh, I saw that one that you put on Instagram today. It was just like, man, those are so great. Those were still some of my favorite pictures. I remember when I got those first ones after Philly this past year, and I was just like, those are so good.
Oh, thank you so much. I really
Yeah,
appreciate that. Yeah, the folks at the Folk Festival are really nice to me and give me a photo pass, and it enables me to get to see people like you and hear people like you, and then eventually we get to talk. So and then maybe I'll get to see you in person again, and we'll keep the conversation going.
absolutely.
Awesome. So I have three final questions I ask every single guest, and obviously I'll link up your tour and all your social media in the show notes too.
Cool.
So here you go. So the first question is, what was the first album that you were given as a gift, or that you went out and bought?
Ooh, the first one that I went out and bought that I can remember was Melissa Etheridge, Yes, I Am.
What a
Little
good
baby
album.
lesbian in southeastern North Carolina. It was a pure act of rebellion.
That was the really popular one in the '90s, right? I think my mom
Oh
had that
yeah,
album. My mom had a white Mustang convertible, and that was like
that's amazing.
always on repeat. Yeah.
It's such a good album.
Oh man, such Melissa Etheridge is uh, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, Second question is, what was the first concert that you ever went to?
Oh my gosh, that's so easy. It was this band called the Jets, which I don't know if anybody even remembers them. It was like a super big version of like the Jackson 5 with all these siblings. They were so cool. I actually had their poster up on my wall for the longest time.
I love it. I love. Where did you see them?
On Camp Lejeune, my mom was a civil servant and worked on Camp Lejeune, so she took me to a concert there, and it was just the coolest. It was so much fun.
Wow. And how old were you? Was this before you were doing your own music,
Oh
or
yeah,
after?
gosh,
Okay.
I think I was probably only 10 at the oldest. I don't think I was much older than that.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And last question is, what is your favorite soundtrack or score from a movie?
Oh, super easy. Last of the Mohicans, hands down.
Wow, wow. That was
Oh
that
yeah.
was easy. That was so is
Oh
there
yeah.
a specific song or is it like the whole soundtrack?
Okay, specifically, and I'm telling you, the people heard me talking about being a nerd, and you're seeing it unfold before your very eyes, Sean. Yes, specifically chorus song, which is the song that plays during their first dance in the movie. It's like they start to realize they have feelings for each other. It's this crazy night. There's like bombs and fire going off in the distance, but then the people are kind of trying to play their music and like keep it calm within the camp. And they have their first moment where they're like, I obviously really want to kiss you. And it is like the most beautiful melody. It is so gorgeous. And I listen to that way more often than I should, considering that the movie is not playing.
I feel like I need to start a whole separate movie podcast just based on the answers to this question, because I always get
Oh
good
yeah.
ones, and I'm always like, man, I gotta go watch that. Oh, that's great. Well, Chris Matthews, thank you so much. People can find you at chrismatthews.com. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. You just have to remember to spell it correctly,
Oh,
or you'll end
yes.
up on the hardball website. So it's just CRYS and Matthews with two T's.
Awesome. And you're at Chris Matthews on social media. Chris
Oh
Matthews
yeah.
Music on Facebook, I think.
Yep, that's right.
And then shows. So was it February 9th in Albany?
Yep, at the Linda, and then February 11th in Montclair, New Jersey at Outpost at the Burbs.
Awesome. And then we got March 26th at Joe's Pub in
Oh
New
yeah.
York. So, but you can see all of that at chrismatthews.com. Check out Chris Matthews on all of your social media platforms and Spotify and wherever you get your music. But just go get a CD, right? I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
Let's do
You
it.
know, you people forget you can play CDs in your DVD player, you
Ooh,
know?
good call. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much, Sean. It's so great to talk to you.
I don't think anyone wants to hear about football/soccer.